Hey guys, this is New Sensei. This is our April Q&A, and I know it's May. That's not bad for what I normally do, but yeah, I do try to push these out by the end of the month. But there's been a few things happening at school and at the club. Those of you who are following me on Facebook might know about the safety incident that happened at the club. For the most part, that's being pushed through. It seems that the local council has agreed to our recommendations and they're trying to make it happen. I'm optimistic, but that should be resolved. If you don't know what's happening, let's say an arrow hit a house and it did 1 damage. So let's move on to our question. The first question is a very good one. It comes from Martin. If I had to recommend an archer for someone to watch and copy, who would it be? Now, some people are already answering Brady Ellison, and considering he is one of the most prolific champions in archery, that might seem like an obvious choice. I actually don't recommend copying Brady Ellison. He's a fantastic archer in every regard, there's no doubt about that. But the reason why I don't recommend Brady Ellison is because, in my opinion, his shooting style and success is a result of a combination of good training from a good coach as well as an adaptation of his shooting style. There are many things that he does which I would probably not recommend to a beginner or an intermediate, and arguably some of the things he does kind of skirts the rules. Now, he shoots exceptionally well. I don't want to have anyone misunderstand what I'm saying. He's a top shot, but as a coach, there are some question marks. If you watch some of his footage, and I'm talking back towards the 2012 Olympics and some of his recent form, he has particular things which may be pinged by the judge. So for example, he tends to over-exaggerate his draws, so he often starts from here. He'll come around this way and swing very wildly. So it helps him align his shoulders correctly, but that amount of offset is really pushing what's legally allowed in competition in terms of high angle draw and sideways draw. If this was a shooting line and he did that, he would actually hit someone with his stabilizers that will actually cross their path to their line of sight. So while he is an exceptional shot and he's really put together his skill combined with good advice, he of course is coached by Keesik Lee on the US national team. I think there are too many personalized techniques that only work for him, and for someone to develop their shooting proficiency, I don't think he's necessarily a good source. He's a good inspiration, and you follow his social media feed, he's a very good person to follow and get along with, but his technique, while excellent for him, it's something I would find hard to teach to somebody else. Instead, I would recommend most Korean archers, men, but especially women. The reason why is their technique is a lot more textbook. So when you pick up a coaching book and you follow the principles of a good shot process, you'll see it in most of the Korean archers. They follow it very well, and the whole training system is basically around this most optimal biomechanical shot process. So when you watch the way they shoot, they are extremely precise in all their movements, in their setup, in their anchor, in their release, and of course the results also show for their training and their methods. So if I had to pick between, say, a Western style archer and a more Eastern, Asian trained method, like a Japanese archer or Korean archer, I'd lean more towards the Koreans, just because it's easier for someone who's learning to shoot to recognize good form and good process in the Korean archer. Of course, there are a lot of archers with their own styles or who are more orthodox and by the book who you could watch, but if I had to pick an archer or a group of archers, I would normally default to the Koreans. They are the best for a reason, and as a coach, I'd say if you copy the Korean style, then you're more likely to have the right process, whereas copying someone like Brady Ellison, there's a lot of personalization. Some things are questionable, they work for him, but not necessarily for you. Next question is from Andrew. Why do archers, or most archers, shoot with both eyes open? And coming from a rifle shooter that only uses one eye, this may seem a little bizarre. The reason why, there are a few small reasons, and some people have a hard time explaining the one big reason, but there are a couple of things. The first reason is humans are binocular creatures. We function best when we have both eyes. So it's easy for us to gauge depth perception with both eyes open, and it's generally easy for us to kind of process alignment with both eyes open. Now, you could argue that with one eye, you can see down one plane. That's more useful if you're aiming down a shaft, for example, or aiming down a sight. But with both eyes, it's a bit more instinctive. You can actually acquire and aim and align with much ease with both eyes open. That's why most archers will shoot with both eyes open. There are smaller reasons too, especially again, those alignment things can be done with one eye. The other reason why we shoot with both eyes open is because it reduces the amount of tension in the face. When you close one eye, what ends up happening is your facial muscles, they get tense, and that changes things. Any tension which doesn't help shouldn't be there. Open both eyes, your face is relaxed, and there's more consistency in your placement of your anchor and more relaxation in the shot process as a whole. People who have to shoot with one eye closed, and this may be because you have a cross-dominant eye, what they might do is to wear an eye patch rather than close the eye, so that way the face is firmly relaxed. And there are similar things with shooting as well. Question from Paul, will a quarter of an inch off an arrow make a big difference? It makes a difference. It doesn't always make a big difference, but it makes a difference. Now, this isn't the sort of thing where, if you have an extra quarter inch, suddenly the arrow is useless. It's not like that, but you may find that it will impact the spine. It might not be much of an impact, but depending on how well tuned your bow is, that might be enough to cause issues. So while the actual difference isn't huge, it might affect you more than others depending on your tune. Meander asked, can you go into more detail about the effects of heat, cold and wind? This was a rather complex question, and I can only give a general answer at this stage. People who've shot in wider conditions can probably fill in the gaps. So the wind is the first one. It's a fairly easy one to cover. Wind blows your arrows in different directions. So crosswinds are easy to deal with. They blow your arrow left or right, and at 70 meters, even a slight breeze can blow your arrow from one color to the next, and that can be a very big difference. Of course, the wind also affects you. So you're standing there like a giant sail, and you're being pushed left and right. So your own body profile can cause you to become unsteady in crosswinds. Headwinds will generally make your arrow drop slightly. There's more air resistance as your arrows are flying through, and it will cause the arrow to slow down a fraction. So you might find your arrows will drop a bit more than usual. For tailwind, the opposite happens. The tailwind will carry the arrow slightly further. Now, it's not as obvious compared to, say, a mobile game, where that up arrow or down arrow means that your arrow will go up here or down here. The headwinds and tailwinds are a bit easy to predict. The crosswinds and the diagonal winds are the ones which are a bit more tricky. So you do have to compensate. You can't ignore the wind. Again, at short distance, it doesn't matter. In indoor, it matters nothing. No one cares about indoor wind. There's no such thing as indoor wind. But outdoor at 70 meters, that's when you do have to consider how much windage you need to adjust for, or whether you aim off. Heat and cold can affect your shooting in several ways. One thing is that it can affect the bow itself, and depends on the material of your bow. If you're using a wood bow, then the heat will cause the wood to expand slightly. That may change the velocity of your bow and arrow. Again, I can't say authoritatively exactly what difference it makes, but that can be a factor. So wooden bows are more susceptible to changes in performance due to changing temperatures. The change in air temperature can also affect the flight of the arrow. Again, think about how hot air rises. So if you notice that the temperature is going from cold to hot or hot to cold, then during a session, especially a long distance, you may find that the arrows will drift higher or lower depending on the current conditions. It is also notable, again, with overcast conditions where there are sudden spells of warmth and sudden spells of coolness, that can also affect the exact placement of the arrows. Again, I can't say exactly how much it affects it, and arguably at certain distances it doesn't matter that much. For those of you who shoot in much more rugged conditions like field archery, please fill this answer in. I can't say so with any authority, but I'm sure your experience will shed more insight and perspective. Ashley asked, how long have I been shooting competitively and shooting overall? This is my 6th year as an archer, my 4th year as a president, I think. And equally my 4th or 5th as an instructor. The years ran into each other, I don't really remember. I will say this is my 8th year as a high school teacher, I do remember that. So yeah, it's been a number of years. I haven't been doing it for that long compared to many of the more seasoned veterans you see on YouTube. How long have I been shooting competitively? I'd say none. I don't consider myself to be a competitive shooter. I've done some competitions at club and state level, but I haven't really put myself out there to compete at a higher level, so I can't claim to be a competitive shooter. I think that would be kind of pretending to be something I'm not. Would I like to be? Yes. I think at some point I'm going to kind of, hit the accelerator and just go for it. But for now, I'm not really in the competitive scene. So yeah, I'm going to say 6 years total, 0 effective as a competitor. Abdul asks, what's the main consideration for choosing a number of strands in the string? This is a balance between energy transfer and speed. Most bows will be okay with 16 strands. That is in fact the default number of strands that string makers will make if you ask for a string. If you buy a pre-made factory string, that should also be 16 strand, because most modern bows that use fast flight or similar will be in the right range for a 16 strand string. If you go above 40 pounds or so, then you might start thinking about an 18 strand or 20 strand, even 24. So basically a heavier string will feel more powerful, and that's because it holds more energy. So with a heavier bow, you generally want a heavier string. But a heavier string is also slower, so it doesn't accelerate the arrow as quick. So yes, it depends on what feels right for you. If you use a heavy bow with too light a string, it will feel like shooting with dental floss. It's just too rigid, it doesn't seem to push the arrow fast enough. Whereas if you shoot a very heavy string with a light bow, then the arrow will also feel very slow. So there's a bit of a balance there. That's the simple explanation. I'm sure some of the more technical experience or engineering will explain this better, but it's between power and speed. That's the simplest way I can put this, even though it might be a little ambiguous. Question from Morton. How do you compensate for sitting in the bow if you are a bit on the heavy side? This is a very interesting question, because if you're thinking about the correct form for an archer, you are meant to be inside the line of the bow. That's kind of the correct way. This is the line right here. You're meant to be inside it. So it's kind of like being the barrel of the gun, as it's used in some systems. So that's the correct alignment. But of course, if you have a larger frame, then it can be hard for you to get that alignment, because that involves dropping your chest, evening your shoulders, and tucking your stomach in, and that can be a little difficult for people of wider frames. There are a couple of things I would advise to focus on. Firstly, focus on the straightness of your back. A lot of people who might be carrying a bit of weight will naturally have bad posture, and it's maybe leaning backwards or hunching over. So remember to straighten your back, and that can help give you the foundations for a clean line and a good shot process. Also think about your shoulder alignment. So power through the shot, and it depends on your flexibility as well. If you can get the straight line where you are from the bow to the back elbow in one line, that's perfect. But if you find you can only go this far because you can't have the flexibility to go further, then that's something you have to work on. You can still shoot and release okay with a suboptimal position. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's much harder to get consistency because you're not in line with the arrow. So yeah, I'd focus on your shoulder alignment and your spine, and not worry too much about being the barrel of the gun, as some systems will teach. Arn asked, where do you get personalized stickers? This depends on what stickers you want. If you're making your own designs and you want to make them into stickers or decals, then any printing service or printing business will do it for you. Even some office supply stores will have printing facilities. If you're talking about just regular stickers, you can print them out yourself in your printer. But if you're talking about this really nice glossy decals, then yeah, most printing businesses will do their own. You can buy your own, of course. If you're thinking about like arrow wraps, then any arrow wrap business will sell arrow wraps and stabilizer wraps and other stickers and decals. But really, most of these stickers and decals are made from printing businesses, not archery businesses. Question from Eric, have you ever seen someone at school rage and throw a chair? I'll mention two incidents. The first one was I was in year 7. I was in school at the time. This wasn't a thrown chair, this was a chair hit, like a classic WWE chair slam. But the chairs weren't the foldable soft steel ones or the metal ones, these were the plastic ones. And plastic chairs do a lot of damage. Do not underestimate how much damage a plastic chair can inflict on a human being. So, just long story short, two best friends had an argument. One of them snapped, got the chair, cracked it over the guy's head. Quite literally, the guy's head was cracked. The skull was actually split, so that was an ambulance ride. He was okay, they're still good friends apparently. But yeah, that was a typical school plastic chair swung at full force against a year 7's head, so that caused a broken skull. Now, as a teacher, I haven't seen this happen, but the closest that it came to was there was a kid who was triggered, and it wasn't like a violent outburst, it was just an erratic, because you might think autism in some ways, right? So it was more of an escalation of threat. So it went from physical. The guy next to him was his friend, but he said something which triggered him. So he started, getting a little physical. He started grabbing pens and went and put it away. Then he grabbed scissors and went and put it away. And you don't physically manhandle children. You just tell them to stop. And I was there to intervene in case anything happened. So when it was okay, and I didn't turn away. I was just waiting for the next action. He then started to pick the chair, and I just kind of went, no, put it down. There was no voice escalation, no shouting, no panic. Simply, no, just put it down. Step outside for a bit if you want. And he calmed down and he was okay. So it's kind of funny because as a student, you expect this to happen. And I was surprised because even myself, thinking as a teacher, if this happened in my first couple of years, I would have freaked out. But I was kind of past that newbie phase. I was a bit more seasoned and grizzled, and I was just very comfortable. One hand in my pocket, one hand over here. So I said, relax, chill, put the chair down. It's okay. And there's no aggression, and the kids were kind of mostly okay. They didn't really try to egg him on further, and things just settled. And we reported the case forward. We had to go to the office, of course, but there was no physical violence. So that was averted. So interesting question. As a teacher, of course, you have a lot of these incidents in some way, but yeah, that was my close call. Very different to the result I had when I was in school myself. Anyway, that's all the time I have for the questions from this month. There are a few that are left out, either because they were way too technical or way above my knowledge, and some I'll try to answer at a different time, but that covers a very belated April Q&A. This is New Sensei, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.